Welcome back, everybody, to the NCAA Next Up Dynasty here on NCAA Football 14. Today we've got a pretty fun episode as we will be revealing this year's college football playoff along with all of the major awards voted by you guys. The bracket is ready to go. Grab your popcorn, get comfortable, because it is going to be a very fun episode. Over the last few days, you guys have been voting for the teams that you think belong in the college football playoff and the award winners, and I have tallied up the results, and I am excited to share them here. I don't know if you guys remember last year when somebody voted Duke a bunch of times in their ballot. That kind of happened again. One person clicked Old Dominion for all of their votes. Another person clicked Auburn for all of their votes. I will catch on to you. Seek God and get a job. Seriously, do you have nothing better to do in your life? All right, let's start off with all of the major awards, and we're going to kick off with the most prestigious award in college football, the Heisman Trophy. But first up, let's meet the candidates for the award. Notre Dame running back Jared Richardson, Texas Tech quarterback Yahya Marshall, Michigan quarterback Callaghan October, USC quarterback Amari August, Cal running back Harrison Myers, Michigan running back Casey Aceron, Michigan State quarterback Jay Jordan, Ohio State quarterback Puma Whitlock, and Ohio State running back Mookie Davis. All right, it's time for the moment of truth. The 2025 Heisman Memorial Trophy winner is, can I get a drum roll, please? Texas Tech quarterback Yahya Marshall. So congratulations to Yahya for winning the Heisman Trophy. The vote was pretty close. Unlike the past few years, there hasn't been an obvious winner. Marshall takes it home very slightly over Jared Richardson, Puma Whitlock, and others. In terms of value to his team, I don't think there's a more valuable player across the country than Yahya Marshall, who has led Texas Tech to an 11-1 record and a college football playoff appearance. Here's a total look at all of the votes. I personally voted Mookie Davis first. I think he's just been so efficient and so dominant. Yahya Marshall, I voted second. And Jay Jordan, the Michigan State quarterback, I put in third. Now we'll be going through all of the smaller awards and their winners real quick before we hop into the reveal show for the college football playoff. We will open up with the Maxwell and the Walter Camp Awards. These awards also represent the best player in college football. They're similar to the Heisman Trophy, but not exactly the same. The Maxwell candidates are Texas Tech quarterback Yahya Marshall, Michigan State quarterback Jay Jordan, and Ohio State quarterback Puma Whitlock. Ultimately, the winner is Texas Tech QB Yahya Marshall, who takes home another award, adding it to the trophy case, getting 36 first-place votes. For the Walter Camp Award, I decided to put the three best non-quarterbacks in the country. So those will be Jared Richardson, running back out of Notre Dame, Casey Aceron, the running back from Michigan, and Mookie Davis, the running back out of Ohio State. Ultimately, the winner of this award is Jared Richardson, narrowly edging out Mookie Davis, getting 41 first-place votes, including my own. I know I had Mookie Davis as first place for the Heisman, but I think Richardson was so valuable to his team that he deserved that award. Next up, we've got the Nagurski and Bednarik Awards, and these awards represent the best defensive players in the country. Our candidates will be Notre Dame cornerback Shante Cooks, Auburn pass rusher Cedric Cabral, and Cincinnati cornerback Melly Golden. Cabral would end up winning the award, getting 32 first-place votes. Each of the corners got 22, including my vote going to Melly Golden, although all three players are very deserving. For the Davey O'Brien, the best quarterback, we've got Yahya Marshall, Jay Jordan, and Vance Maximum of Old Dominion. I tried to focus more so on the best pure passers in the country for this award, and it would end up going to Yahya Marshall. I voted for Jay Jordan because I think he's been the best passer in the country, but Marshall's been phenomenal as well, so I totally get it. For the Doak Walker Award, it is down to the best running backs in the country, Jared Richardson, Casey Aceron, and Mookie Davis. Jared Richardson of Notre Dame ends up winning the award. I voted for him in first place here over Mookie Davis again. I'm more so focusing on the rushing stats rather than everything put together, which is why I put my vote there for Richardson. The Fred Biletnikoff Award for the best receiver in the country is down to Racer Fox, Kyrese Tellington III, and Scotty St. Anthony. by a very comfortable margin. Racer Fox of the Washington Huskies would end up winning the award. Very well deserved. He's been the best receiver in the country. The Mackey Award for the best tight end comes down to Orlando Slaughter of Michigan State, Isaiah Deloach of Bowling Green, and Landon Connors of Toledo. All three players were within 10 votes of each other, but Orlando Slaughter of Michigan State ends up winning the award. In the Google form, I actually had Slaughter down from being from UCLA, but he plays for Michigan State. For the Outland Award as the best offensive lineman in the country, we've got Jake Trotter out of USC, Oswald Wiggold out of Georgia Tech, and Dakari Bonds out of Miami. This was another pretty close race, but ultimately Jake Trotter of USC narrowly edges out Dakari Bonds 38-32. All three of these guys are expected to be pretty high picks in this year's draft. The Remington Award for the best center comes down to Corbin Dayton of USC, Marcus Leach of Bowling Green, and the ultimate winner by a wide margin, Sandy Funk of Ohio. I voted for Dayton. I do count overall rating a little bit into awards for offensive linemen. As for the Lombardi as the best defensive lineman, we've got Cedric Cabral out of Auburn, Aaron Gorman from the University of South Carolina, and Jordell Jones Sr. from Notre Dame. Cabral would end up winning the award pretty comfortably with 65 first-place votes. For the Dick Butkus Award as the best linebacker, we've got Terry Butler, Stephen Brown, and Bernie Dutch. Butler won the award comfortably. I accidentally wrote him down for having 23 forced fumbles in the Google form. He only had 3. He probably still would have won the award regardless, but I figured I would point that out. And finally, we've got the Jim Thorpe Award, and this one ended up being a tie. Notre Dame's Shante Cooks finished in 3rd, and for a two-way tie in 1st, we had Jelani Johnson Jr. of Northwestern and Melly Golden of Cincinnati. Since it's a tie, we're going to give both players the award, so they have each won a share of this year's Jim Thorpe Award. I couldn't really think of the tiebreaker for awards, so I figured I would just give it to both players. So those are your award winners for the 2025 season, and now it's time for the moment of truth that we have all been waiting for, the College Football Playoff Reveal Show. The bracket is ready to be unveiled. We will find out the 12 teams and the bracket for this year's playoff. So we're going to start with the 6 at-large bid teams. These teams have automatically qualified for the playoffs thanks to winning their conferences. These are the Power 5 conference champions, being Florida, Navy, Ohio State, TCU, and Washington, along with the highest-ranked Group 5 conference champion being Texas Tech. So with that, the number 1 overall seed in this year's playoff will be the Ohio State Buckeyes. The reigning national champions are back and better than ever. Ohio State won the college football playoff a season ago. They returned 90% of their starting lineup, and unsurprisingly, they are the favorite to win the championship again. Puma Whitlock and Mookie Davis, the stars of last year's team, are still here with the Buckeyes better than ever. Ohio State lost their season opener to Oklahoma, the team they beat in the championship last year, but then they've been perfect ever since then. I think the Buckeyes have gone slightly under the radar this season because they've just dominated everybody. All of their wins are by regularly between 20 to 40 points. They blow out everybody they play, including Notre Dame, in the conference championship. Because of that, they don't ask a whole lot of Puma Whitlock as a passer. He doesn't have to throw the ball that much because they're up by so much in the second half. Mookie Davis, Ramir Conwell, and Puma Whitlock have combined for nearly 4,000 rushing yards on the ground, and that number is only going to go up with Ohio State here in the playoffs. Their entire receiving core from last year is back. Most of their defense is back as well. These Buckeyes are once again the team to beat in the playoff. Now we've got the number 2 overall seed, and that will be the Washington Huskies, the only remaining undefeated team left in the country. So Washington and Ohio State finished very close to each other for the number 1 seed, and I think there's arguments that go both ways. Obviously, Washington had the better record. They went undefeated, and I would have understood if the Huskies ended up getting that top seed. Washington has beat some really good teams this year. They beat Cal on the road. That's Cal's only loss all year. They beat Utah on the road down the stretch. They manhandled Arizona State in the conference championship. I think this team absolutely has what it takes to make a national championship run. They've got a dynamic offense with quarterback Kai Suggs-Gardner. They've got a two-headed monster in the backfield with Jason Thornburg and Ben Bones, both of whom have ran for over 1,000 yards. At receiver, they've got Racer Fox, the best receiver in the country, 100 catches, 1,600 yards, and 20 touchdowns. Their defense is very good as well, headlined by their pass rush, although their top defensive lineman, Tony Adichie, is currently injured. His status for the playoff is questionable. Washington getting a first-round bye should certainly help his recovery a little bit. Ohio State and Washington certainly feel like the two favorites in this year's playoff. Let's see the other two teams who will be getting a first-round bye. That starts with the Florida Gators, the champions of the SEC, who will be the number 3 seed. Last year, Florida was the number 1 overall seed. They made it to the Final Four and lost. They actually made it to the Final Four 2 years in a row, but have been unable to get over the hump. Florida was almost just as good this year. They lost early in the season to Oklahoma, but they've beaten some good teams. They beat Tennessee on the road. They beat Georgia, who played well towards the end of the season. They lost to Old Dominion late. That obviously stung, but they have other impressive wins, such as beating USC and then beating Auburn in the conference championship. Part of the reason why the Gators have been unable to get over the hump recently has been the inconsistent quarterback play with Ernie Capellar. He's obviously gone. They now have Deontay Harris running the show. They've got a good duo out of the backfield with Rudy Burns and Richie Rhodes. Rhodes has missed a large portion of the season, but he is fully healthy. They've got a number of very solid receivers led by Derico Callaway, who caught 14 touchdowns. But overall, it's a really balanced unit on offense. And defensively, they've got a bunch of future NFL pros. This Florida team is just as good as they've been over the last few years. Will this be the season the Gators get over the hump? I will say they do have a lot of things going for them, including the fact that of our 3 playoffs we've had in this series, 2 of the 3 national champions were 3 seeds. The number 4 seed and the final team getting a first-round bye in this year's playoff will be the Group 5 representative, the Texas Tech Red Raiders, who won the American Athletic with a record of 12-1. Similarly to how Ohio State and Washington were sort of tier 1 of teams, I think Florida and Texas Tech are tier 2. The Red Raiders went 12-1 this season. They were on fire early in the season with many impressive wins against good teams like Army, Boston College, Kansas, LSU, Old Dominion. They have looked a little bit shaky over the last few weeks, but they did beat Boston College again in the conference championship. They're led by quarterback Yahya Marshall, the Heisman Trophy winner. Heisman winners have not had a ton of success in this series in the playoff, and Yahya Marshall will certainly look to change that narrative. Getting a first-round bye will certainly help things out. Texas Tech does have some question marks defensively, but they can outscore just about anybody. Their defense does worry me a little bit against some of these elite offenses. So we have 2 more teams who have automatic bids into the playoffs, being Navy, the ACC champs, and TCU, the Big 12 champs. They can be seeded anywhere into the playoff. So we will start with Navy, who will be the number 11th seed in the playoff. They ended up being in 5th place for the at-large bid teams. Navy is coming off a dramatic ACC championship win in double overtime against Middle Tennessee State. The ACC was not a very good conference this past season. Nobody really deserved to make the playoffs, but it had to be somebody, and it was Navy, who ultimately won the conference championship. They had a tough stretch between weeks 10 and 12, but they've won their last 3 games, including an impressive win against Army, and then the ACC championship win over Middle Tennessee State. I think Navy, who missed the playoffs last year, was a little bit better than this year's team. However, I think this year's team is more well-equipped to play in the playoff because they're a lot more balanced on the offensive side of the ball. They're not just about the gimmicky option anymore. They can throw the football as well. And defensively, this is always the strength of Navy's football team, this year being no different. They had one of the best defenses in an albeit weak ACC. So if you're able to put 2 and 2 together, that leaves only one spot where TCU could be, and that's obviously going to be as the 12th seed. I thought it was fair to put Navy and TCU as the bottom 2 seeds because they are the 2 worst teams in the playoff. While they did win their conferences, I still feel like they have a lot to prove. It's kind of like the NCAA basketball tournament where you had the lower conference champions in the smaller conferences getting lower seeds. This TCU team is not a top 12 team in the country by any means, but they won a weak conference and they have made it here. Can TCU make a surprising run? I think the answer is yes. If you look at their schedule, they dealt with a lot of adversity early. They started the season off 3-4, and it looked like there was no way they would have any slim chance of making the playoff. Then they won 6 in a row. They beat West Virginia in the conference championship, and they are here. TCU's last appearance in the playoff was 2 years ago. They ended up winning the national championship. Part of the reason why TCU's been inconsistent this year has been the quarterback position. Tegan Yeager has missed much of the season, but he is healthy. TCU has a number of key players from their championship team 2 years ago, including running back Harry Stewart, who was one of the stars of that team. They've got a good group of receivers, although Griffin Weaver III is currently injured. His status for the playoff is also questionable. So TCU will be the 12th seed. They've got a lot to prove, but last year's 12th seed, Oklahoma, ended up making the national championship. So I think it is certainly possible for a red-hot Horned Frogs team who has won 6 in a row to surprise some people. We knew these 6 teams were going to make it. It was just about the order. I think the College Football Playoff Committee got the order spot on with these 6 teams. So with that, we have 6 more open slots left. These are for the teams who did not automatically qualify for the playoff and instead were voted on by you guys. The highest at-large bid team into the playoff will be the number 5 seed, and that will be the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They will host TCU in the first round of the playoff. Notre Dame was one of 2 teams to finish the regular season undefeated. They took on Ohio State in the conference championship, ultimately losing by quite a lot. That one loss does not define Notre Dame's season, however. They've been pretty dominant throughout the entire season, beating really good teams like USC, Wisconsin, Navy, Oregon, and others. The Irish went 12-1 and are looking to get back into the playoff. They made it 2 years ago and were embarrassed by the California Golden Bears on the road, but now they're at home. I am a little bit worried. Their offense is kind of one-dimensional, but what they do well, they do really well, and that's get the ball to their star running back, Jared Richardson, who was a Heisman Trophy contender. He ended up finishing 2nd place and is one of the most dominant players in the country. He's going to need to play well for this team to win a championship. I think it is possible, but the Irish are going to be going up against a lot better of defenses than they faced throughout the regular season. I think this team has the talent to go on a big run, but I do question if their style of play will let them. So Notre Dame will host TCU in the first round of the playoff. The winner will go against Texas Tech in the second round for a spot in the Final Four. The number 6 seed in the playoff, who will be hosting Navy? It'll be the Tigers of Auburn. Auburn ended up winning 11 games in the regular season. They were one of, if not the best teams in the SEC, but they ultimately lost the conference championship to Florida in a game where their offense did not show up whatsoever. The Tigers have been really good throughout the season. They've beaten some really good teams, LSU, Ole Miss. They beat Oklahoma. That's the game where I sort of realized that this Auburn team is legit. But they also have not been playing their best ball lately. They got shut out in Week 12 against Georgia, and their offense really struggled this past week against Florida. They've got some good players on offense, but it's an inconsistent unit. Jet Jackson at one point in time looked like a Heisman Trophy contender, but he struggled during the second half of the season. Gaffison Quinton is a pretty good lead running back. They've got a solid group of receivers led by Trayon Scott, but I'm not sure if that's enough to overcome their offensive inconsistencies. If this team wins, it's going to be because of what they do on defense. They have one of the best defenses in the conference, led by Cedric Cabral, who's arguably the best defensive player in the country. You guys certainly think so, considering he won a bunch of major awards. So we've got 2 of the at-large teams in, but we've still got 7, 8, 9, and 10 to go. Let's find out the 3rd at-large team and the 7th seed into this year's college football playoff. It's going to be the California Golden Bears. Cal was my number 1 voted at-large team. Other than Ohio State and Washington, I don't think anybody in the country is as good as Cal. You guys seem to be a little bit lower on them, having them in 3rd place. They still will get to host a playoff game, though, and are certainly deserving of it. Cal went 11-1 in the Pac-12. They do kind of lack a true statement win, but they beat most of the teams they played against by a comfortable margin. Their lone loss was against Washington by only 5 points, and obviously we know Washington is quite good. Cal has made the playoff 2 years in a row, another team who has been unable to get over the hump. They're led by quarterback Marquise Harris, who had a phenomenal season as his first full year as a starter. Harrison Myers out of the backfield was a Heisman Trophy contender. Tim Howard is a really good complement behind him. Eberle Keltstan is a legit wide receiver 1. And defensively, these guys are quite solid, particularly the defensive line. They've got multiple good pass rushers, specifically Ibrahim Luoksar and Javonte Knight. I think this Cal team was really underseeded, and I could certainly see them making a big run into the championship potentially. We've got 3 more spots left to go. Notre Dame, Auburn, and Cal were all expected to make it in. Now we're looking at some of the bubble teams. Which bubble teams get in? Which bubble teams will miss the cut? We will start with the 8th seed. The USC Trojans will be the final team to host a first-round game. USC made the playoff last year after winning the Big Ten, where they were embarrassed at the Rose Bowl by Ohio State. If USC wins their first-round matchup, they could get revenge against Ohio State in the second round. USC was honestly a little bit more consistent than they were last year. They beat some really good teams, such as Michigan State and Wisconsin, 2 bubble teams into the playoff, with their only losses being against Notre Dame and against Florida by just 4 points. Amari August, the first-year starting quarterback, was a little bit inconsistent, but he was a dynamic playmaker, and he obviously was a Heisman Trophy finalist. Monty Bradley at running back is one of the most dynamic playmakers in the country. Thomas behind him is pretty good as well, and they've got a really solid young group of receivers. They're led by guys like Squeezy Pryor-Escobar, Cash Wade Jr., Caden Morgan, and Tay Devine. Their offensive line might be the best in the entire country, and defensively they're pretty stout as well. USC is certainly a team who could make some noise, but they would have to beat Ohio State in the second round, which is a lot easier said than done. We've got 2 more spots to go. Let's see which team will be the 9th seed into the playoff and face off against USC inside the Coliseum. That team will be the University of Tennessee. The Vols make their first ever college football playoff as they get past the bubble into the playoff. Tennessee is one of the hottest teams in the country. They have not lost since week 4. That's 8 consecutive wins in one of the better conferences in the country. Their losses were very close games. They only lost by 4 against Florida, who is a playoff team, and they only lost by 4 against LSU, who's probably the best 6-6 team I've ever seen. If you look at all of these scores, most of Tennessee's games are very close. They had by far the worst point differential of any playoff team. They have mastered the art of close wins, which can be a blessing and a curse. They know how to win close games, but they might not be as dominant as some of these other teams. Roddy Jolly leads the way at quarterback. Running back Mohamed Dahoud is currently injured. We'll see what his status is for the playoff. Zach Torres, LaMichael Jackson, and Gunnar Ironside lead a good receiving core. And defensively, they've got multiple future NFL players on that side of the ball as well. Tennessee can be a little bit inconsistent. Their close games suggest that this team could make a surprise run, or they could lose by 40 in the first round. So we've got only 1 more spot to go. Who will be the final team in the playoff? Could it be Michigan State, Oklahoma, Michigan? Could it be a Group 5 surprise? The Michigan State Spartans will be the final team into the playoff. They will go up against Cal in the first round. So Michigan State grabs the last spot. They were only 1 point behind Tennessee for the 9th seed. Michigan State ended up getting this last spot pretty comfortably. There wasn't anybody behind them who was all that close to stealing the Spartan spot. Michigan State went 10-2 in the best conference in the country. They lost to USC and Ohio State, the 2 best teams on their schedule, but they do have a big signature win on the road in Michigan, dropping 63 in Ann Arbor against the Wolverines. This Michigan State team has a very high ceiling, especially compared to some of the other at-large bid teams. I think this team has the ceiling to win a national championship. They're led by Jay Jordan, the best pure passer in the country. This team reminds me a lot of Duke last year. They have a super explosive offense who can score 50 points if they want, but defensively, this team does struggle. a little bit, and there's a chance they won't be able to keep up with some of these great offenses. They play against Cal in the first round, and if they win, they'll play against Washington in the second round. Those are two of the highest scoring teams in the entire country. Michigan State's defense could have long days if they don't play at an adequate level. They can score a lot of points, but they'll allow a lot as well. So this is the full bracket in its entirety with the locations of the first round games. The top 4 seeds got to choose their bowl destinations for the second round. Ohio State chose the Sugar Bowl, Washington chose the Rose Bowl, Florida chose the Orange Bowl, leaving Texas Tech with the Fiesta Bowl. If you look at the bottom, those are all of the teams who missed out of the playoff in order. The first team out was not Oklahoma or Michigan or any Power 5 team to begin with. It was actually Florida International. FIU was the first team out of the playoff, which really surprised me. I would have thought it would have been like Oklahoma or Michigan. And going back to Michigan, look how far they are. Michigan wasn't even close to getting in according to the vote, which really surprised me. I actually strongly considered putting Michigan in for my final vote over Tennessee. I thought Michigan really deserved the opportunity to potentially be a playoff team. I didn't vote them in, but I almost did. So the fact that they only got 5 of a possible 76 total votes really surprised me. Here's a look at all of the votes along with my personal votes as well. I think the committee got the 6 at-large teams correct. I thought those were the 6 most deserving teams. I really did think about Oklahoma and Michigan, though. I think both of those squads are really good as well. But I do think the committee got those 6 right. I don't think they got the order of those 6 right, though. I thought Cal should have been first, and by them going to third, they ended up getting royally screwed, in my opinion. As I take a look at this bracket and the perspective of Cal, I think it's very unfavorable for them, and I think they should have been the 5 or the 6 seed, which would have made their road to the Final Four a whole lot easier. In the first round, they have to play against a really good Michigan State team who I could see giving Cal some troubles. Cal's secondary is probably the weak link of their team, and I could see Michigan State's passing game exposing them. If Cal had to play against Navy or TCU in the first round, it would have been a whole lot easier for them to move on. If Cal does win, they'll then have to play against Washington in the second round. They already lost to Washington this season. I think the Huskies are head and shoulders better than Florida and TCU. So California is in a really unlucky situation. I'm curious to see if they'll be able to dig out of it and make it to the Final Four, or if one of those other teams gets in. So I'm really excited to see how the playoff unfolds. Normally the bowl games would be in the next episode, but in the past it seems like you guys really want us to jump right into the playoffs, so that's what we're going to do. The next episode will be the 4 first-round games in the playoff. We've got Notre Dame, TCU, Auburn against Navy, Cal against Michigan State, and then USC against Tennessee. Should be a lot of fun. Let me know what you thought of the reveal down below in the comment section. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out.